Hey guys, my name's Joel, and in this tutorial we are going to be making this curved corner computer desk. It's going to have a complete support structure. We're going to build out some brackets to hold everything in place, build out the legs, and then we're going to optimize it so we can add it to our asset library and drag and drop it into new projects. So we're going to start off by adding a plane. And then under transform on the item tab, we're going to change the dimensions to make something realistic. So I'm going with a 0.6 by 1.6 to start off. And then we are going to add a loop cut so we can give it a bit of a curved edge. Obviously, so we want to make a corner desk. So we'll pop a loop cut in somewhere like that. Now, if we want to get this really precise, we can use the measuring tool and measure from the edge of the desk like that. You can see that's roughly 0.6. I want to make mine a little bit smaller, so I'm just going to move that loop cut along. In from there, I want to make mine quite nice and realistic. So I'm going to change this transform to global. I can see that X is the distance from the world origin, which is 0.3, because obviously the whole thing was 0.6. So I want to drag this out by about 0.5. So if I hit E to extrude and move this along that axis, you can see that value in the top right going up. So I'm going to drop this at roughly 0.8, which is obviously 0.5 above where it was. Something like that looks good to me. Again, we can kind of measure this just to make sure we've got everything right, and that's measuring at 1.1, which is what we want, which is perfect. So, with that in mind, we're then going to grab the whole thing by pressing A. We're going to extrude it up along the Z-axis. And again, I'm looking at those values in the top right. I'm going for roughly a 2 centimeter width. That's perfect. So then we're going to want to bevel all of these edges. So we're going to go around, we're going to select these corners. Just grab all of those corners there. But then if you try and bevel these straight away, you might see some weird shapes. So we're going to go back into object mode. We're going to apply all transforms. And then from there, we're going to hit Control B and bevel those corners off. Something like that is fine for what we're going for. Perfect. So then the kind of corner on the inside is not quite straight. So I'm just going to move these loop cuts a little bit to give it a bit more shape because it's not exactly square. That looks right to me. And then we're going to grab this center bit. And we're going to bevel that out to make a nice curve in the center as well. Just like that. That looks great. So next thing I want to do, the edge of my desk has got kind of like a plastic coating. So I'm going to select this loop of faces. And I'm going to hit Control F, extrude along normals, just to give it that little bit of a ridge, and we can add like a plastic material to that later, and just keep the wood on the center. And I'm going to grab these two edges, and we're going to bevel those off, make a nice curve. If you see it's kind of overlapping where you want to go, you can press C, and that'll clamp it so that it doesn't overlap any other lines in your model. So we'll do that there. And that's the top of our table looking good. So for our support structure, then we're going to add a cube. We're going to make this much smaller. So like a 2.5 centimeter is about right. And then we want to position this in one of the corners essentially. So I'm just moving it up on the Z axis to make it flush with our table. And then from a top view, we're going to move this down into one of our corners. So roughly something like that. That's fine. And then we're going to use this and mirror it by 4 corners. So to do that, we're going to go add a modifier, and we're going to search for the mirror modifier, which is this one here. And we are going to select the X and the Y axis, and we're going to use the tabletop as a mirror object, and there you go. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that clipping is also enabled, because when we're kind of extruding this, we don't want to have them overlapping. So we'll enable that as well. And then we're going to grab one of these faces, and if we extrude this, you can see it'll extrude on all corners, but they won't overlap each other, which is what we want. So we'll just carry on and build out our basic structure there. Now we want some further kind of supports in the middle as well, because obviously you've got a lot on this desk. You don't want it to just collapse. So we'll add some more loop cuts here. We're going for roughly where we want that center beam to come out. Something like that is fine. And then again, we're just going to grab this face and we're going to extrude that. There we go. We've got a bit of a central structure going there. Now we want a base for our legs of our table as well. So we're going to add another loop cut on this central beam, just on one of the edges here. So we'll have a loop cut there, and we're just going to do the same thing. So we'll pop a loop cut down there, and we'll add another one, and just form the base of our beam. And again, we're just going to extrude that out. So there we go. We've got our basic structure put together. Now, if you grab all of this, just by doing that and hit Shift Z, grab it and move it around, then you're not going to move it in the Z axis, but you can kind of adjust the whole structure to get it to a place where you want to have it and have it looking good. So something like that is fine. Obviously that's not going to hold this corner bit, so we need to add an extra little support beam along this corner, and we just applied the modifier there, which basically finalizes your changes and converts the whole thing to a mesh, so you can just kind of edit one of these corners. So I'm just going to add a loop cut in here and then do the same thing again. I'm just going to extrude this and make a bit more of a support structure. Obviously, we don't want to do it just on one axis at this point. We want to hit Shift Z, just keep it flush to that table, but get it somewhere that looks good. And again, same thing. We just add a loop cut, grab this face and extrude it along, just like that. We're going to continue to build out this support structure. So we grab this side as well. See, it's quite difficult to get it exactly precise, but what we're going to do is kind of look at the positions of this, and we're going to get it really exact. So what we're going to do for this is if we grab one of these faces here, so we'll grab this face, you can look in the top right, you're going to see the exact positions. So move that just away right now. And here we're going to look at this Y position and basically copy it to that other edge. Just straighten this off, just like that. And we want to copy this face to make sure it's in the same position as the X value, that other beam. That's precise. And then we want to match this inside edge to the end of that other structure. So we're looking at the Y value, and we're just going to put the same Y value in there. Yeah, exactly. So there we go. So we know that everything is now flush and precise. And that is our basic beams for our support structure done. Looking good. So the next thing we want to do is add a bit of a base for our legs. So I'm going to add a little loop cut in this corner here. And we'll make that quite precise again. So we're going for a 1.5 centimeter away from the table. And then we're going to extrude this along, have that basic kind of support basis for where our legs are going to go later. And we'll just do the same thing on the other end of the support as well. So we've got two of our bases ready to go. So just duplicate that and move it across. Plonk that in there, line that up. And then we'll just rename this to support structure just to keep everything nice and organized. And we can rename the plane to the tabletop as well, so we know exactly what everything is as we're working. And if you drag this and hold shift, you can drop it so that the tabletop's apparent. So if you move anything, it's all going to move together from now on. Now, obviously, nothing in real life is quite as flat and rigid as this. So we're going to add a little bevel modifier to our support structure. We'll just use that just to kind of gently round off these edges, make it look a little bit more natural, just like that. Perfect, that's looking good. So now we want to add some brackets because this is kind of floating. So to do that, we are going to add some loop cuts, and we're going to use this to basically duplicate those edges and get it exact. So if we grab these edges and we duplicate those with the Shift D, and we can move that away, just like this, just away slightly, so it's not noticeable, but looks right. And then we're going to hit P and selection to then separate that from the support structure so we can manage it differently. And Shift H will isolate that view so we can work on this on its own. So we need somewhere for the screw to go. So we're going to grab this edge. We're going to extrude that along. And we're also just going to give this a bevel so that it looks a bit more natural as well. And then if we go back to be able to view the whole thing with Alt H, we can then line this up so that it looks flush to the tabletop. So just about there. That is perfectly fine. So now we need to attach this. First, we'll extrude these along normals just to give it a little bit of thickness, make it look a little bit more real. Something like that is fine. And then we just want to add a screw. So we're going to grab this bottom face here, and we're going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, to select the center of this. And then we're going to add a sphere to build out our screw. So we'll scale this down. And see, all the way down. We want to make kind of the rough size of a screw. And then we're going to scale it again on the Z-axis to flatten it out. Make it look a bit more like the head of a screw. And then we're going to grab kind of a cross section of edges here. Just like that vertically, and do the same horizontally. Got that one. Grab that. There we go. And we are going to grab those and we're going to move them downwards. So if we grab that, hit Z, move that down, you get your kind of Phillips head screwdriver indent in the top there, which is what we're looking for. Now, as this is a bit more detailed than the rest, we want to give it a subdivision surface. We're going to separate it again with P. We're going to rename that to screw head. We'll make that a child of the fixture. And then we're going to add another modifier to this because right now it looks a little bit blocky. So we'll add a subdivision surface. I'll just make it look a little bit cleaner. And obviously you don't really need that on the bracket, but on the screw you do. So move that up because obviously the screw's not going to be completely flush to the bracket. And then we'll add a little washer underneath as well. So we'll add a circle at the same point. Again, we're going to scale that down to fit kind of just around the outside of the head of the screw. So then right now this is just kind of a circle. There's nothing to it. So we need to position it just above where the base of our bracket is. So move that along the Z-axis. Just put it just above. So a little bit lower than this. We'll click F to fill. And again, we'll reposition that a little bit better. Just like that. And then we're going to extrude it upwards and just give it a little bit of thickness. Make it a bit more realistic. And that is absolutely perfect. Lovely. So we've got our bracket ready to go. We'll rename that to washer. We'll pop that underneath the fixture as well. And then with our fixture, we obviously want to duplicate this. You can't just duplicate just the fixture selected. So you want to right click, select hierarchy, select the whole thing. Change the origin to geometry. So if you rotate it, it'll rotate around its own axis. And then we're going to start duplicating these. And we'll just move it around the structure, rotate them into place. And we'll put a few more brackets around our model to make it look a bit more realistic. So we'll position these and we'll just build out a few more of those along the whole support structure. Just by doing the exact same thing, and we'll end up with something like this. We've got our brackets and it looks nice and real. So the next thing we need to do is add in our legs. So we're going to select this part of our support structure. And again, Shift S and cursor to selected. And we're going to add in a cylinder to start working with. So if we grab a cylinder there, again, we're going to want to scale this down and get it to the kind of size so it's just nicely fitting in this gap that we built for it. Check there, that looks good. We're going to want to shade it smooth. And we've renamed it to legs there. And again, we're going to add a mirror modifier. So we're going to select the tabletop. And we're going to mirror it in the y-axis this time and remove the x. So we've got both our legs and we can work on both at the same time. So with a shade smooth, we're then going to grab it and move it upwards. And again, you can use those measurements in the top right to get it exactly to where you want it to be. So you've got this central bit. I'm going to bevel this off because my desk is adjustable. So you can kind of raise these legs up and down as you want it. The way it does that is it's got an outer tube and an inner tube. So this is going to be our outer tube. And then we're going to select this inner face and we're going to extrude that again to create kind of the inner tube there. And we just want to double check the position of this. You can see with mine, my legs are going straight through the top of the table. So I'm just going to grab that and move it on the z-axis just to get it extra precise. You can turn on this X-ray vision and get that flush with the table. There we go, we've got our legs. We are going to delete this top face because the legs are hollow. And then we need to put the base in. So we're going to add a plane to do that. And we're going to use the scale this time because you can use dimensions like we did earlier, but you can also use the scale and it basically does exactly the same thing. You can see when I've changed that scale, dimensions change too. If I change this dimension, then the scale has changed. So you can kind of, it's interchangeable which one you want to use. So we'll get this to the size that we want. We'll move that into position there above our legs. So we then obviously we need to move it to the top of the leg. So we'll go from a side view, move it up on the z-axis and position it just above our legs there. Just like that, looks good. And then we're going to grab this lower face and we are going to extrude it downwards, give it a little bit of thickness. Now, obviously at this point you could just move it on the z-axis to position it, but there's an easier way of doing that. So if you actually grab this base and hit B, you can clamp it. So if we select this and we hit B, and then we're going to clamp this edge to that edge, you can see it snap them both together. Now, because it's obviously snapped the edges together, you might want to reposition just like this. And we'll position it just perfectly over our legs there. Now we want to make these one object. So we'll select the base and then the leg, hit Control J, and it will join the meshes together. You can see it picks up the mirror modifier as well. Next, we want to bevel this edge. So we're going to add a loop cut onto our leg and we're going to scale this top ring outwards. And then we're going to select both of those loops and bevel. And again, if you find that yours isn't snapping nicely like this is and it's going through the model, just hit C and it'll clamp it to the edges that you've got there. Finally, our blocky base is not great. So we're going to grab these corners and just bevel those off, make those nice and curved. Something like that is great. So now we want to make some feet for our base. So I'm just going to grab one of these rings on the leg and duplicate it and move it upwards. So I've got exactly kind of the right size. And then I'll move that into position. Press F to fill. And then we're going to use this circle to kind of model what we want our legs to look like. You can see the mirror modifier is already there. So we're just going to extrude this downwards. Get a nice side view there. And we're going to continue to extrude it again. And scale it inwards. And then we'll add another extrusion. Then possibly scale that. Or we could add another one here. Scale that one outwards. And then scale that into our base to get our feet there. But obviously the bottom of this is not looking ideal. So we'll grab this face. And we're going to hit I to inset. Move that inwards. Extrude it down. Inset again. And then extrude the center bit upwards to make it look a little bit more realistic. Just like that. Happy with that. So we need a foot on the other side as well. So we'll just grab this. And from a top view, we will duplicate that. And we're going to move it along to the other side on the x-axis. Once you're happy with the position of your legs, we're going to apply the mirror modifier. And then on the longer edge of the desk, because that's obviously not supporting it, we're going to grab the foot and the edge. We're going to move it along on that x-axis to make something a bit more realistic that can actually support the weight. And then we have the basis of our legs. And we want to optimize this for our asset library. So we're going to rotate it, because obviously right now it's upside down. We're going to apply that rotation, and then we're going to move the whole thing and position it so that the feet are kind of perfectly on the world origin. So if we grab the whole thing, and we're going to just move upwards, get that kind of perfectly there. There we go. And with your cursor at the world origin, we're going to right click and set origin to 3D cursor to make the origin of the object at the floor. Now I'm going to use Blender Kit to add some materials to this. There's a link in the description if you want to check this out. But basically, they've got a bunch of free materials, and the add-on is built into Blender, so you can just kind of drag and drop materials onto your object as easy as that. We're going to add some materials there, and then we're going to optimize it, the asset library. So we're going to select everything and hit Control J again to join it as one object. And we're going to right click this tabletop. Actually, we'll just change that to computer desk rather than table, because that would make more sense for later. Change that from table to computer desk. And then we're going to right click and we're going to mark it as an asset. That's going to add it to our asset browser. So in future projects, we can just drag and drop this computer desk in just like that. So the last thing to do then is to add it into our house. I believe the best way to learn anything is just to do it. And what better way to learn 3D modeling than to just model everything around you? So I created my own house, and I'm going to be modeling everything in the house and uploading videos for all of it. If you want to see how the house was made and follow along with all of our modeling, then check out this playlist. And as always, if you've got any feedback on this tutorial or anything that you would have done better, please let me know in the comments down below. I think this is a great platform for learning, and I'm excited to learn together. So I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you in the next one.